In the dystopian future called the Time of the Red, information is abundant, yet untrustworthy. Network 54, the main megacorporation in charge of most news and television stations, continuously pumps out content meant to pacify the masses and keep them entertained rather than inquisitive. Some people join the megacorps to try and change the system from within. Others strike out on their own, using scream sheets and the data pool to get the word out about what's really going on in the world. The truth is out there, but in the time of the Red, can the truth be believable? Hello there, and welcome to the latest in my series, How to Run Cyberpunk Red. The focus for this video will be another deep dive into a role you can play in the game, this time the media. For this video, I'll be diving into character creation, including what the character sheet would look like using the complete package build, Lifepath options, the media-specific Lifepath, and the role ability for media characters called credibility. Keep in mind that these are just the personal opinions of one game master. Treat my suggestions regarding character creation, skill breakdowns, and choices with a bit of skepticism. Take what works from my video and throw away the rest. Trust me, I won't be offended. Furthermore, I'm now an affiliate with our Talsorian Games online store. You can find the URL in the description below. Be sure to use the code TheKingsSquare during checkout. Within the cyberpunk universe, medias typically occupy two contrasting extremes. On the one hand, you have the media members who strive to expose the truth, or at least show the uglier side of life under the thumb of the megacorps. Lyle Thompson, seen in Johnny Silverhand's flashbacks in Cyberpunk 2077, is an example of that kind of media, particularly since he covered both the attempted rescue of Alt Cunningham in 2013 and the assault on Arasaka Tower in 2024. Trace Santiago, the child of the nomad Santiago seen with Rogue in Johnny's flashbacks, would be another example of the mostly idealistic media who breaks a story revealing the rot in the world. In the time of the Red, Trace Santiago was responsible for breaking the news that President Kress of the new United States of America was responsible for supplying the nuclear device that was detonated in Night City through her connections to the megacorp Militech. As a contrasting illustration, consider media personalities like Ziggy Q, who is seen in the Network 54 broadcasts of Cyberpunk 2077. Ziggy Q, a dazzling talk show host, consistently avoids challenging his guests. For Ziggy, it's about the stardom and fame that comes with being on TV, not about exposing the corruptive influence of the people cutting him a paycheck. A variety of medias exist in the time of the Red era, including investigative journalists who bring megacorp schemes to light, and paid propagandists who manipulate public opinion for celebrities and corporations. Because of their potential reach, it's entirely possible for a media character to be as well connected as rocker boys and fixers. As a media character increases their rank in credibility, they gain access to bigger and better sources of information, their platform to disseminate news grows in size, and the audience is more likely to believe the story the media is selling to them. I'm changing up how I do the character creation segment for this deep dive, unlike the videos before. As well as screenshots from the core rulebook, I'm also adding screenshots from a character sheet I filled out using the complete package build method. It seemed like a wise way to watch how character creation turned out in the end. I've chosen STS as the handle for this media example, standing for Shock the System. That kind of pretentious handle is going to make sense as I dive into the mock character that I've come up with. Starting off with personality, I went with arrogant, proud, and aloof for STS's personality type, which makes the STS handle make a lot more sense. This also plays into the clothing style and hairstyle for STS, which I've set to Asia Pop and Wild Colors. STS is a media that wants to stand out, make a scene, and speak truth to power. Or at least that's the face STS will show. On the surface, STS values honesty above all else, but the character is also deeply self-centered, as evidenced by myself being the most valued person, and STS is rather neutral about other people, which shows that STS wants to cause chaos, but doesn't really care about how that will affect the actual people involved. Corporate managers and megastructure Warren rats were chosen to stand for family background and childhood environment. This makes greater sense when I added in the family crisis of family vanish. My headcanon for STS is that his family were managers in one of the megacorps in Night City and had a rather comfortable life before his parents up and vanished without a trace, most likely for crossing someone at their corporation. To survive, STS became an orphan in a megastructure in Night City, getting some formal education, but also where STS developed their me first, everyone else can fend for themselves attitude. STS developed an attitude from his upbringing where he aims to be feared and respected, as he thinks this will shield him from similar pain later on. I'm going into a side of character creation I haven't tackled much before in this video. As part of the general Lifepath system, you as the player will roll one 10-sided die 3 times for these 3 options: friends, enemies, and tragic love affairs. You start with 0 friends, enemies, or tragic love affairs if the die roll is 7 or less. For the sake of creating STS with as much background as possible, I've decided to go with 2 entries for each category. Friends, enemies, and tragic love affairs serve a couple of different purposes. First, it adds depth to your character's background, since it means they have people that connects them to the game world. Second, it gives your game master NPCs they can flesh out to make the world feel more vibrant. Personalizing your story hooks is crucial for Cyberpunk Red, and these 3 life path options offer a GM ample opportunities to do just that. STS has a friend named Roland, whom he met while on the streets of Night City. Every media needs a friend who's connected on the street to help churn up some rumors and innuendos the media can dig into. I also didn't want STS to not have any kind of family, since that would make for a far less interesting character, so I added Tessa as his adoptive mother from the megastructure STS grew up in. This particular life path option, enemies, is engaging because it enables a deep dive into the antagonist, the reasons behind their animosity, the forces they can deploy, and the results of any encounters. Since I've built STS to be loud, abrasive, and a self-centered character, sooner or later he was gonna piss somebody off. Having been framed for a crime Dex committed, Dexter Matthews has transformed from an old friend into a bitter enemy. Dex has a small group of 5 friends of his that he can use to harass STS, but they generally avoid each other. This kind of enemy gives a GM a small-scale antagonist to bring out every so often. The stakes for these encounters don't have to lead to violence, since STS and Dexter make it a point of avoiding each other. This other adversary, on the other hand, could create significantly more problems for STS and his crew. Tamara Jones is a fellow media that STS called out publicly for dropping a news story against an executive for one of the megacorps. In STS's mind, not putting out the story made Tamara a sellout, which Tamara did not take well. Tamara has since joined up with a booster gang for protection while still working stories in Night City. She and STS take regular potshots at each other on the data pool, which is the city-wide internet service. Tamara could easily turn into a major threat to STS and his crew due to her connection with a booster gang, and could perhaps be turned into an antagonist for an entire gig the crew picks up. Lastly, tragic love affairs are included, suitable for Cyberpunk's dystopian setting, where enduring, healthy relationships are rare. Clarice was the first person STS fell in love with, but she was ultimately exiled from Night City due to the actions of Dexter Matthews, one of the enemies I previously covered. I wanted to add this dimension to the Dexter Matthew enemy so that it would make sense for the situation between STS and Dexter to eventually boil over into a full conflict. Yumi's vanishing act is the type of unresolved narrative element that excites me as a game master. Creating a mystery as to what happened to Yumi would be a fun gig to create for a character like STS, who would use their contacts to dig up what happened to their long-lost lover. With the primary life path options covered, we'll now move on to the media-based life path options. First up is the kind of media your character would be. The options range from blogger to documentarian to street scribe. For STS, I chose investigative reporter. The next question focuses on how your media gets the story out to the public, which could range from publishing in a monthly magazine to news channels to scream sheets. STS doesn't want to dilute their message, so they publish directly through scream sheets, which are the cyberpunk equivalent to old school newspapers in the real world that can be printed out from any data center in the city. For me, the most important question for your media is determining the kind of ethics they possess. These range from the stereotypical hard-nosed reporter that only focuses on the facts and provides honest reporting, all the way to a media who is completely corrupt and sells their soul to publish whatever stories bring them the most profit. STS is arrogant, and despite valuing honesty, his overwhelming desire is to make a big name for himself, and he will drag anyone through the mud if it gets him to the top. The last question for the media-based life path concerns the kind of stories your media wants to tell, which could be celebrity news, propaganda, or even political intrigue. Due to STS having lost his family to what he believes was corporate machinations, his stories focus on unearthing secrets to bring down the megacorps. With both the general and role-based life path options selected, it's time to get into the crunchy bits of character creation, starting with stats. In case you haven't watched my previous deep dives into the roles, stat generation in Cyberpunk Red follows one of three options: Street Rat, Edgerunner, and Complete Package. As a general rule, I suggest Complete Package since it gives players the most freedom when creating their character. On page 75 of the core rulebook, you'll find the template for media stats. With the Street Rat method, you'll roll a 10-sided die one time and select the row based on that number to get all 10 of your stats. If you use the Edgerunner method, you'll roll that 10-sided die 10 times, once for each stat, and pick the stat based on the number on the die. Complete Package gives you 62 points to use for stats. No stat can be lower than 2 or higher than 8. I suggest starting with 6 in each stat and then start subtracting and adding points until you have the spread you're looking for. Looking at the Street Rat Edgerunner template on page 75, you can see some of the suggested focuses for a media's stats. Medias can serve as the public face of a crew, engaging with people at gigs, but their true power lies in their information gathering skills and ability to craft compelling narratives for the public. You can see this in the template with intelligence, technique, luck, and empathy having the most lines with an 8 for the stat. Cool, which is usually the stat associated with social interactions, and will are shown to be the dump stats for the template. That doesn't mean you as a player have to treat them that way though. This is the stat spread I chose for STS. I put intelligence, cool, and empathy at 8, representing his educational background and general cagey intellect, his ability to talk his way into and sometimes out of trouble, and his underlying empathy for other people that he hides under a mask of indifferent cynicism. The main dump stat I went with is technique, since STS doesn't care too much for the technical aspects of presenting his stories, relying solely on his personality to sell the story. Willpower being set to 7 represents that STS is better equipped to deal with stress and danger than most, largely because of having to fend for himself in a megastructure growing up. With more willpower and less body, my starting hit points are quite good. Starting with an 8 in empathy, I begin with the maximum possible humanity points, which is 80. Skills are the next area of character building to focus on. Like with stats, you have Street Rat, Edgerunner, and Complete Package options. With Street Rat, you have a predetermined list of skills and ranks already assigned to them. For Edgerunner, you have the same list of skills from the Street Rat template, but now you can distribute the ranks to them as you see fit. You get 86 skill points with the Edgerunner method. No skill can be lower than 2 or higher than 6, and there's a list of skills that must have at least 2 ranks in them. The complete package method gives you the same 86 points and restrictions as Edgerunner, but now you can select from the entire list of skills rather than the curated list from the templates. Skills in bold on the Edgerunner template need to have at least 2 levels to show essential Edgerunner life skills. The non-bolded entries, though, show an idea of what a typical media would focus on. Composition covers a media's ability to create a professional and compelling story and is based on intelligence. Photography and film is a technique-based skill for those media that focus on creating captivating video stories to sell to the public. Library search and deduction are also intelligence-based skills, focusing on the research and logic abilities of a media. Lip reading comes in handy when a media would want to track conversations they're not actively a part of. And handgun is self-explanatory. This is cyberpunk after all, and even medias need to know how to defend themselves. The screen currently shows STS's skill list I compiled using the complete package build. You can see I didn't invest too much in a lot of education skills like composition, but I did put ranks in bureaucracy, deduction, and education, showing STS knows his way around the bureaucratic maze of corporations and can draw direct conclusions fast. Since I put an 8 in the cool stat, I chose to make persuasion and conversation the only skills with 6 ranks in them. STS uses his personality and rhetoric to sell his stories rather than fancy words or compelling narratives. Now we move on to weapons and armor. If you use the Street Rat and Edgerunner option, you use the same template here as well as getting 500 Eurobucks to buy other items or keep for when gameplay actually starts. Complete package builds grant your character 2,550 Eurobucks for all weapons, gear, armor, and cyberware. The complete package also gives a player an additional 800 Eurobucks for fashion wear and outfits. Media characters begin with a choice between a heavy pistol or a very heavy pistol, 50 rounds of ammo, and light armor jack for their head and body. I started off with that as well for STS using the complete package build. Media starting gear and outfits are simple, though some can be substituted with cyberware. Essentially, an agent functions as the cyberpunk world's smartphone, and most characters possess one at the start. The rest of these are fairly mundane and practical for a character that's meant to record events around them for editing and broadcasting later. With STS, I kept it relatively simple: an agent, two disposable cell phones that he uses with contacts and people he meets, as well as a radio scanner music player for when he's out and about in Night City. For outfits, STS starts off with Asia pop and generic chic, letting him make the outfits fit the loud and brash persona he sells to his audience. Cyberware is the last point. Media characters using the Street Rat or Edgerunner builds will get a cyber audio suite with either amplified hearing or a voice stress analyzer, and a light tattoo, losing only 10 humanity points, reducing your empathy stat by 1. Since I went with the complete package build for STS, I went for more extensive cybernetic options. The benefit of putting an 8 in my empathy stat was it gave me 80 humanity points, the highest amount possible, so I had a lot of room to work with as far as avoiding cyberpsychosis. Cyber Audio Suite was my choice, supplemented by amplified hearing, an audio recorder, and a scrambler descrambler, given STS's significant paranoia. Amplified hearing gives STS a +2 to perception checks involving hearing. His audio recorder is integrated with a memory chip via a neural link, giving him the capability to capture audio at nearly any moment. The scrambler descrambler lets him scramble outgoing communications and descramble incoming communications, protecting himself and his sources when they reach out to him. My investment in a cyber eye for the micro video implant allowed STS to secretly record events to his memory chip. The image enhance implant gives him a permanent +2 bonus to perception checks based on sight, lip reading, and conceal reveal skill checks. Lastly, I invested fully into fashion wear, with 3 light tattoos, granting STS a +2 bonus to his wardrobe and style skill checks. I also bought both chem skin and tech hair, which gives him a +2 bonus to personal grooming skill checks. STS is a proud, arrogant peacock and wants to look as good as he can when he presents his stories to the public. Overall, the cyberware implants for STS cost a total of 19 humanity points, dropping his total from 80 to 61, which turned his empathy from 8 to 6. If you're still with me at this point in the video, thanks for watching, Choom. We're almost near the end. Remember to hit the like and subscribe buttons to see more of my content when it becomes available. Credibility is the role ability for medias, encompassing various facets of their operations within the Time of the Red's nightmarish world. The first part of credibility is rumors, which represents the information networks a media has access to. If the media player isn't actively looking for something, the GM will make a passive roll for the media player, adding their credibility rank to a roll of a 10-sided die. If the media is actively digging into their information network, they would roll the appropriate stat, usually streetwise, conversation, library search, etc., plus one 10-sided die against the active DV listed here. While the gossip varies from indistinct to elaborate, the warning at the bottom of this screenshot is vital. Rumors are frequently untrue and do not represent the complete narrative. This gives GMs the ability to actively seed doubt and misinformation into the party, which works well with the general paranoia of cyberpunk as a genre, if that's the vibe you're going for. Publishing stories or scoops is the most crucial element of credibility. This encompasses the size of a media's audience, the types of access and sources available, the audience's reception to the story, and its subsequent impact. Believability can be affected by a couple of factors. If your story has one piece of verifiable evidence that the masses can easily understand, the chance your audience believes the story increases by 1. If there are 4 distinct pieces of verifiable hard evidence in your story, the chance increases by 2, and these do stack, which can ultimately raise your believability chance by 3, which is huge at the early stages of a media's career. Luck points cannot be used to boost a believability check. When your media publishes a story, you roll a 10-sided die. Your roll needs to be at or under the number listed on the believability field for your rank, which is why adding verifiable evidence to your story is so important in the early ranks. I'd like to add that in Cyberpunk, playing a thoroughly corrupt media character is an option. Verifiable evidence does not mean factual evidence. It is entirely possible and potentially encouraged to manufacture evidence to plant for the stories that you create, depending on your media character's moral compass. Just something to keep in mind. Once you've published a story on a specific topic, you can't publish another story on the same subject unless you're adding some new information to the mix. Credibility provides varied advantages depending on your rank score, much like the Rocker Boys' charismatic impact roll ability. If you're starting off as a media character, you automatically begin gameplay with 4 ranks in credibility. Credibility ranks 1 and 2 are the lowest level of the ladder. Your media knows a local honcho, gang lord, and some of the leadership members of the local neighborhood. Your audience is just the immediate neighborhood you reside in. Your believability chance is 2 out of 10, meaning you'd have to roll a 2 or a 1 on the 10-sided die for your story to be believed by your audience. Without evidence, a new media personality's story is hard to believe. The impact of your story, if it does get believed, is small, maybe only affecting some small-scale issues in the neighborhood. Moving up in the world or starting your media journey happens at rank 3 and 4 of credibility. You have access to a city gang honcho, a minor politician, a corp exec, and a well-known person in your immediate neighborhood. Your audience has expanded, with you becoming a regular contributor to a local scream sheet or data pool. Believability increases to 3 out of 10, meaning you'll need to roll a 3 or lower on a 10-sided die. Again, adding more verifiable evidence to your story makes it considerably easier for your audience to buy in at this stage. Impact-wise, your stories are beginning to have direct effects on your neighborhood, perhaps leading to arrests or people being removed from powerful positions. Your character has established a strong reputation at credibility ranks 5 and 6. You now have access to a major player in your city, a city politico rather than a neighborhood political operator, and you've caught the attention of a celebrity for the local area rather than just your neighborhood. Your audience has expanded even further to become citywide, appearing on scream sheets outside your immediate area and even appearing on TV. Your trustworthiness has improved to 4 out of 10, and the power of your stories now extends to citywide transformations, such as forcing corporate leaders to answer for their misconduct. Your media gains substantial importance around credibility ranks 7 and 8. Your access sources now include a local corporation president, the mayor or a city manager, and a celebrity known by the entire city. Your audience has now expanded to include the entire state rather than just your city. Believability is now 5 out of 10, meaning without verifiable evidence, you've got a 50-50 shot of your story being believed on its own merits. Impact has changed drastically, with your stories leading to laws being passed or struck down at a state level, as well as mid-level corporate powers learning to fear your name. Being ranked 9 in credibility means you're incredibly influential. Your access sources are no longer confined to your immediate geographic area, including a divisional corp boss, a politico in the state government, and a celebrity known across the country. Your audience isn't quite the entire country, but it's close. Believability now sits at 6 out of 10, which means the more verifiable evidence you include in your story, the chances are very few people will question it. The changes that come about from your stories could affect an entire nation. You might be able to take down a neocorp that's a national brand. When you reach credibility rank 10, you're seen as a trusted and implicitly believed media source. Access sources now includes a major world leader, the head of a megacorp, and a celebrity known across the world. Believability is now 7 out of 10, which means if you include 4 verifiable pieces of evidence in your story, it's going to be believed, period. The impact of your stories stretches across the globe to the degree that megacorps and governments fear what you can do to them. Medias can affect your Edgerunner crew as much as, or possibly even more than, a rocker boy. Rocker boys can cultivate a massive cult-like following through their charismatic impact. Medias, on the other hand, can literally sway the masses to their point of view, whether that's for good or ill. Having a media in your crew of Edgerunners gives a GM the chance to show how the actions of the crew can affect the world around them, while also keeping in mind that the point of Cyberpunk isn't to save the world, but to save yourselves. For all the power a media can accumulate by increasing credibility, a GM should ensure that moral compromises become part of that process. Power corrupts, after all, and medias are at the center of different avenues of power. This gives a GM the ability to craft gigs that can give a media character a story to tell, but also give them the choice of how to tell that story. The fascinating nature of multiclassing for medias is entirely dependent on how you tackle it. If you become a media rocker boy, aka the documentarian, you can utilize your credibility to not only inform the masses, but also build a rabid base of supporters that live and die by your word. A media solo, aka the Thompson, would take after Thompson, the media who ran with Johnny Silverhand during his flashbacks in 2077. Another fun concept could be the media fixer, aka the independent journalist, which combines the street-level cultural access fixers rely on to get goods and services with the media's high-level sources to tell broader, far-reaching stories. That covers it for the deep dive into the media role. Thanks for taking the time to watch the video. If you like my content, consider signing up for my Patreon to show your support. Patrons get shout-outs at the end of the videos, as well as access to exclusives like the Legends of Cyberpunk series I'm working on. Stay safe out there, Chooms.